Hi. Hello, Brandon. How's it going?
Good. Busy, tired, building this fundraiser.
Yeah,
Going crazy.
definitely.
We raised 700 plus today so far, shooting for 1,000.
Yeah, and you were worried about that, so
Yeah, whatever. We're doing well.
absolutely. My name is Chris. This is Brandon Stevens. So we are working on Project 3D. We're here today to talk about what Project 3D is, kind of the goals, where it came from, kind of the backbone to this, and we'll go from there. So we'll start with you since you are
You
the
should be wearing
master.
your Project 3D hat.
I should. Yeah, I don't know where I think it's in my car. That would have been funny. Nice little.
Right. Yeah,
That
no,
would,
exactly. All right.
yeah, since you're the mastermind behind this and the original founders, let's get where it all came from.
So just long trying to make a long story short here. Project 3D, I have a really good friend in the 3D printing space, and I've been talking to him for a while. And we've recently, when I transitioned out of another project I was doing, I was trying to figure out something to do, something that I wanted to build, something I want to create. And I ended up starting a company called UPG Waste, which was on the e-waste side of things. I'm picking up electronics and all that, to then refurbish, resell, and keep out of landfills. Well, as that idea came about, I started realizing that the second biggest waste stream on the planet was plastic. And then when I started digging into it, I ended up figuring out that you could essentially take plastic waste. If you built a production line in very specific processes, you could take plastic waste and convert it into brand new end products that can be 3D printed. And so once I figured that out, we started doing research. Well, you and I started doing research on the different things you can create from it, like graphene, and moving down that road. So we can essentially take recycled plastic waste that nobody else, just throwing it away, putting it in recycling green buckets. It's a whole nother story that doesn't work. But we can take that plastic waste and create brand new end products out of it that supply local communities and local businesses and even government contracting if we go that far. So an example of that would be like you pick up like 100 200 plastic bottles, and then you use that and you put it through one of the machines. You get it shredded, you get it melted down, you turn it into filament, and then you create a brand new end product out of that through specific 3D printers. And one of those end products could be casts for medical facilities, stents, armor, tools for toolboxes, things, keychains, things you see on anything you can see can be created once the process is figured out, and we can do it from plastic. So the idea of Project 3D came to life once I figured out we needed to start something that could raise the funds to be able to develop those processes and figure out different ways to convert all these types of waste into end products through plastic or other types of waste conversion to 3D printing. So that's kind of where it came from. And then my partnership with you has kind of grown that.
Good, awesome. Now we'll kind of talk about what's been my end of this. So I run a bunch of businesses of my own. One of them being the Cowork. Used to be Cowork Londonderry. We're changing it to be just Cowork. So Cowork is a co-working space in Londonderry. That's why it's called Cowork of Londonderry. And we're a drop-off site for UPG waste. And Brandon brought this to me, and I like the idea instantly. I'm all about keeping the environment clean. I love that type of stuff, right? So we're using the co-work as a place for people to bring their electronics anytime they want and drop them off so that we can recycle them. And things started spiraling out of control. And now we're
One thing or
uh,
another.
and
Yeah.
now we are officially a drop-off site for plastics as well. Since now we have the process figured out to how to do this, we can now take plastics and then turn them into 3D printed filament or injection, which is another method. However we go about it, we can reuse that stuff
Mm-hmm.
to take it out of the environment and put it back in the system, which is fantastic. So yeah,
Yeah,
I like
I
that a
mean,
lot.
e-waste is one of the biggest problems on the planet for toxic waste and pollution. And then the only runner-up to that, the next in line was plastic. So that's how kind of we pushed into that. And I mean, like understanding that, we started, no matter which way, and you'll see this on the GoFundMe as well, no matter which way you swing in politics, we all know one thing, and that's right now, product cost, consumer cost of products going through the roof. right?
Yep.
So things that were like $5 last year are now 10, $12. It just keeps rising. And then on top of that, logistics is just being killed. Like things that would take a week or so to get to you, if they're overseas, now they're taking 2, 3, 4, a month, multiple months, depending on what it is. And so with that fact, we needed to figure out a way. Well, not needed, but I decided I wanted to figure out a way to combat this problem while cleaning up the planet. And figuring that out, the fact is, if we can get waste for free, right?
Yeah.
This is something we can get for free. So we can get waste for free. We have little to no acquisition costs to get that waste. Now, if we have the machines and the production and the place to do it, to turn that waste into end product and supply small businesses with that, we're now dropping their cost to purchase the product, which also allows them to drop the end cost to the consumer, thus hedging against the rising costs, right? That's beautiful. That's unheard of. On top of that, everything being local massively improves logistics, especially with your vision of the co-work and creating a logistics chain around New Hampshire. Massively improves logistics so people can get their products sooner for less. And on top of that, we're opening up jobs.
Absolutely. So jobs, entrepreneurship, saving the environment. That's a great mix all around.
Absolutely.
So let's go a little bit into the recycling portion of it. I sent you something on it earlier. I think it's something that people don't realize, because when most people look at kind of what we're doing, I've gotten it a couple of times already, is what's the difference between this and what people are already doing for recycling. So do you want to hit on that?
What do you mean? And go in depth in that more. You mean for like throwing in a green bottle and a green bucket?
Yes, because most people do. They think, they put it in that whatever color it is, green, blue, ours are blue. They put them in the blue bucket and they're like, oh, we're recycling, when most people don't actually realize that most of that's just going in a landfill.
No, absolutely. So for all those people, a lot of people probably are used to curbside recycling, which is usually there's multiple different types of recycling. There's recycling that's curbside, that is I want to say, I don't know if it's government owned or community owned, but the town sets it up. Then there's private recyclers who you have to pay to get your recycling picked up as well. And then there's towns with absolutely no recycling, that's curbside. You have to bring it to a transfer station. I've been in all three, right? So I've seen firsthand how everything operates. Now, just because you throw a plastic bottle into a green recycling bucket to recycle it does not mean that is going to be used for, that's even going to be recycled. It does not mean anything. It means that you're giving it to a company that wants to decide whether or not they're going to use it to make a profit, right? There's no way for them, if they don't use it to make a profit, they're just going to put it off on somebody else 9 out of 10 times, just how they operate. You get good ones every once in a while that find ways to dispose of this stuff if they cannot turn it into something else. But no recycling company does what I just talked about, turning that into brand new end products. At best, at absolute best, they're going to take that plastic and take it and figure out how to make a couple, like they do volume. They'll pick it up. They'll figure out how to donate it to a redemption center or whatever, depending on how they use it, and they'll melt it down to do something with it. But they're not creating brand new end products out of it. They're going through a downstream recycling process where it just gets incinerated. They're not supplying the economy with it for the most part. And if you go into the towns where they have recycling and transfer stations, all that in the mix, you get to really see how some of this works, because not only do you not have curbside recycling, but you have to bring the recycling there. And when you're there, you have to sort it in all these different ways. So and what that's doing is they get to see, what they're going to make money on and what they're not going to make money on, because you're sorting it in the station for them. And then after that, there's nothing really guaranteed. It's the same, like there's no guarantee that that's going back into the economy. There's no guarantee that that's going to help the local communities by recycling it that way, besides just getting to the waste. And you don't know where it goes. I don't know where it goes. You don't know where it goes. We can only get a hunch from things we've learned and been able to see. And I can guarantee you, though, it's not going back to the community to make the community a better place.
Correct. And what we just touched on is, like you said, recycling companies are only sorting and taking the recycling that's profitable, which is a very small amount of the plastic that actually gets recycled. And
Mhm.
most everything else is thrown in landfills, and until 2018 was shipped to China.
Yep. Yep.
So, and
Exactly.
that's it. And then in 2018 on, China will no longer accept those things. So most of it, except for a very small, minutely profitable portion of plastics, ends up in your local landfill, most likely.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
before in 2018, like you said, how do people think we were taking, like, how did we get enough recycling and plastic that we had to ship it to a different country if we were disposing of it properly? That
mhm,
doesn't make sense.
yeah,
So the fact that China had to cut us off from shipping it over there means we weren't doing our job, even though we were fronting our job good.
mhm, yeah, and there was some medical stuff to it too. But yeah, essentially, it became less profitable. And the biggest fallacy with recycling has always been the towns and these big contractors only recycle what's profitable. And after that, it just goes where everything else goes. It goes in the dump.
Yeah, our goal at Project 3D is to make everything profitable. We're going to figure out a way. That's why we are raising the money to form it as a nonprofit, is because we want to have the funds and the donations and the ability to see what we can do about making everything become something else.
Correct. So I think this is the biggest thing, and this is really what drew me to Project 3D in the beginning, is I like UPG waste. I was more of a stand side to this because I was with the cowork, but I'm all in on Project 3D because I like the R&D portion of this, where we get to.
UPG Waste is a for-profit company that's going to
Mhm.
be dealing with Project 3D, because
Yep.
when we get to the point where we are picking up your plastic, if it's not just a drop-off center, if we get to the point where we can go to towns and pick up plastic, Project 3D will be contracting UPG Waste to go do that.
Yep. Yep. And it's a good way to go about things. And but back to what I was saying is like the R&D portion is what towns don't do. It's
Mhm.
what um, contractors will do. It's what the government doesn't do. The government doesn't care that that huge portion of waste just goes in landfill. They don't care. They're going to leave it for the next couple of generations to figure out. Where us as a nonprofit, we can put together the R&D team through the process of 3D printing and all that stuff, and we can figure out what to do with that stuff. And it doesn't even stop with plastic. You got cardboards.
Mhm.
I would love to get to a point where it's the entire landfill itself
Yeah.
gets dealt with.
No, exactly. I mean, even starting Project 3D and having the ability to fundraise and build this thing alongside UPG Waste means we have another route to deal with e-waste as well, because a lot of e-waste has plastic, coating, plastic housing, plastic, that stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean, otherwise, I mean, it's like the whole deal with e-waste is, as a recycling company, you want to take that e-waste, you want to make sure the data is destroyed on it. That's part of the deal of being an e-waste company,
Yep.
and protecting the public and security from that. But on top of that, then it's about refurbishing it and reselling it to make it profitable through the data, after the data destruction, wholesaling it or recycling it responsibly, which when you recycle it, it typically goes to a third party company or manufacturing facility that melts it down and takes the gold and silver from it, which is fine. But now with Project 3D, we can kind of keep that in house as much as possible, because
Mhm.
we can take the plastic off the waste that we can use to create new end products out of as well.
Yep. Yep. And it's that level of innovation that's going to set us apart from your local contractor, your local government. So that's kind of something to look forward to in the future.
Absolutely, especially when we move into government contracting.
Yeah, that'll be a bit down the road, but we'll get there. I'm
Oh
really
boy.
excited about it. So let's talk a little bit about where we are now. So we just launched the GoFundMe earlier today.
Yep, today. Yep.
Yep, around midnight, which was fun.
Yep.
Um,
Already
and
raised over $700. And I have 2 to 3 other people that are committed to funding it. So we'll probably hit over 1,000, if not today, in the next day or so. And
mhm,
then we're shooting for our first $5,000, which is the most important mark we can hit, because
yeah,
that's what we need to launch a nonprofit. We actually need 4,000, means 970 or
mhm,
960, something like that, to
yeah,
just under 5,000 to launch the nonprofit. So we put it at a flat 5,000, and then we want to hit that number. and then we'll be able to form the nonprofit as well
Yeah,
from that, which will turn every donation we get after that into tax exempt donations.
correct. And that's a big part about being a nonprofit is if you want to help us grow the company, you can get tax benefits on the side, for
Yeah,
donating to the company.
absolutely. You want to save on your taxes by donating to something that's going to help lower the cost of products in your area and clean up the waste in your community. There's a win-win in that.
Yep. And you mentioned it earlier when we were talking by ourselves. It doesn't even have to be money. So once the nonprofit's set up, you can donate things to the company as well.
Right.
I'm working on getting trucks or getting sprinter vans or some type of vehicle because we're going to be
Yeah.
needing that type of stuff to begin with. And so I'm working on that end of things, and those things can be donated as well. You
Yeah.
mentioned
And even
electronics.
and it all goes back to having strategic partnerships and setting up this vision of the new supply
Yep.
chain of what we're calling it accordingly. Because I own UPG Waste and we're launching this nonprofit, when it comes to donations, now you can come and donate. Like usually UPG Waste, we're taking more refurbished or broken down things or old things. But if you want to support a nonprofit, you can now donate newer items to Project 3D on the electronics side that we can resell as well under UPG Waste, because that money is going to the nonprofit. That can be considered a donation as long as you donate it to Project 3D, because it's something where we can make our donation money on, if that makes sense. So it's endless as long as it's geared towards the mission of the nonprofit. It makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a good benefit to being a nonprofit. So let's talk about. So you mentioned the first $5,000 are pretty important, and that gets the company founded. The
Yes.
lawyers are take care of their things,
Yes,
so the
we're
whole
going with
nonprofit's set up.
Anderson Business Advisors. My advisor's name is Nicolo. He's a very good gentleman. He knows one of the board members of Project 3D, Ronaldo Santana. Apparently,
Okay.
they were friends. I didn't know that when I hired them, but I found that out. So it's actually close to home now, and they're going to take care of us completely.
Cool, perfect. So let's talk a little bit after that. So we've got the nonprofit set up, and then the next 2,500 or so is the first of the machines that we need to make everything run.
The shredder, right?
Yep.
That we're looking at when you're pricing stuff out, because we recently were going to go get a shredder from another company that was more expensive, because that was the best option we had until we stumbled upon a connection that'll allow us to slash our cost of getting our equipment up and running, at least for the first production line.
Yep. Yep. So like you said, the original goal, I like the original machines, but again, like you said, to get everything running in the beginning, we don't need the Mercedes or the
right
Bugatti of these shredders. So what the shredders do is you take all of the plastic, once it's sorted out into its categories, you put it into the shredder, and it creates granulate that you can then eventually put into an extruder that creates a 3D printing filament. So the shredder is one of the most important parts, because that does the bulk of the work, breaking the plastic down into pieces that are small enough to put into the machines. So that is the first step. And once that's up and running, that becomes our first big milestone, because then we can bag up the granulate, and that can be sold as well. So we can begin very early in the process of working towards making everything self-sustainable, because that granulate can be sold to people who have their own extruders or do their own 3D printing like that.
Yes.
So,
And this is also guys, for everyone listening to this, Chris is our R&D guy. This is going to be his life. This is what he loves to do. And he's going to be doing a lot of R&D on everything we deal with. I'm the face. I'm just pushing this vision. We came up with the idea. We brought Chris on. We have another girl coming on named Michelle, who's very into this and absolutely love her. She's going to be our treasurer. But back to what Chris was saying with the shredder and everything, that's just the beginning. But if you go onto our GoFundMe page, he brilliantly laid out the exact process for what we want to do and the things involved with it. So that's really good. But yeah, Chris is going to be an R&D guy, since every day he hits me up with either graphene or cardboard or any other cool inventions that happen we could possibly turn into end products.
Yep. So, I mean, I wasn't going to bring up the graphing thing right away, because that's going to be a project of its own. But again, as part of R&D, my job is going to be taking what we have and figuring out how to turn it into other things. So in the beginning, again, that's going to be a lot of the manual labor with the shredding and figuring it all out. On my own, I've been working on graphene, figuring out how to produce it. Because in small quantities, it's easy. I've done it. I have some sitting over there. In large quantities, it's going to be quite a bit more difficult. But once it's done, we'll have solved an issue that is fundamental to this whole thing, where they say recycling isn't profitable. Well, if we can turn plastic into graphene, that's it. Like recycling is now.
We'll be able to turn recycled plastic into 3D printing filament and recycled plastic into graphene, and then coat that 3D printed filament with graphene.
Yeah.
From recycled plastic. That's insane, but it's awesome. And from what we have figured out and seen and gone down the rabbit hole of, we can pull it off.
Yep. And that's, again, this is our goal. And when I started, again, I have a very modest background. I was a soldier, I was an infantryman, so we're not known for our smarts. But the way I look at it is a lot of the greatest inventions in history were accidents, and I can accident my way into anything. So
right.
We'll
and another thing we'll subtly be doing as Project 3D, which a lot of people probably don't realize, is by doing this, we're actually inspiring entrepreneurship. Because if we can become a collection point and start getting all the plastic and turning into shredding, like Chris was talking about, like what would you call it? Shredded granulate?
Yep.
Shredded granulate. You get that. Now we can supply people who just want to, like once we can turn it into filament from there, we can supply them with just the shredded granulate, or we can go the next step, turn into filament and sell that filament to people who want to start their own 3D printing operations and create their own products and e-com stores and yada, yada, yada. And they don't have to do the first, 2 steps of the supply chain, the production line to deal with that. They can just be the entrepreneurs they are and start what they want to start. And so by doing that, they're supporting our vision as well.
Yep, absolutely. And it's all rolls very nice and neatly together with, the co-work and the maker spaces we're going to be putting together and all of this stuff. So it's going to be a big entrepreneurial community that through recycling and taking from other people's consumption, we can put it back into supply chain in a way that isn't, just consumption. It's sustainable.
Absolutely. I love that, especially creating logistics starting around New Hampshire to supply everybody that's possible. People are going to start loving that when they're coming to us for everything at a lower price. But that's cool. No, it's good. People just love the fact that we're cleaning up the environment to start.
Absolutely. And I'm very big on that. Like I said, I was a soldier. I've spent a lot of times walking around in the woods. And when I walk around in the woods, I hate running into plastic bottles and cans and all this stuff. And I'm a fisherman. So there's, going out on the ocean, constantly seeing things come up with the fish that I'm like, why does a fish have plastic on it? And stuff like that. So keeping the environment clean is minimum best for the next generation, and then good for us too, right?
And the thing about the way we're doing this is it doesn't stop at just products, because if we push this far enough, we've already seen it in different industries beginning to get into the involvement of structural development, such as housing, right? And so people have created an entire house in foreign countries from plastic, right? They've done that and 3D printed it. Obviously, over here, permits and things are different. But once you get to that point, and I'm thinking once we introduce the mixture of graphene into 3D printed items and coating it, we'll be one step closer to be able to do development of actual house, like parts of houses as well, and supply not just products, but like tools for building.
Absolutely. And this is another fantastic part about the R&D department of this whole thing is, this is a little further than just the fundraising portion of it, but when we can make graphene reliably when we want to, mixing that with the 3D printing filament or the recycled plastics opens up everything. So anything that is metal can be 3D printed and be stronger than steel, because graphene is stronger than steel. So, and lighter, which is phenomenal. So transportation, like you said earlier, medical, you name it, with the introduction of graphene into the process, it'll be taking us to the future. Essentially, space travel, everything will be out of this particular system, which is why I'm
we have
very into it.
The whole thing about Medical, which is which you know from our conversations, a super high interest of mine. Medical stints and CAS, and the thing is, that's not far off because there's a company in the U.S. that's already done it and got it covered by insurance. The thing is, they didn't want to scale nationwide.
Yeah.
They didn't want to. They wanted to be, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, we want to blow it out of the park. We want to build bigger, and from our knowledge, that company has done it from 3D printed filament with no knowledge of creating 3D printing filament from recycling. We don't know, so don't hold us to that, but that's just from our knowledge at that point. So we're trying to bring it up a level if possible, and then we're trying to bring it everywhere once we get to that point. It's very, very valuable to be able to create items that are that useful for the community and the public and different businesses at a much less cost, that are also covered by things like insurance, created from our own waste. I mean, that's, if you really dive into that and think about that, it sounds like a crazy concept, but it's already on its way.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, so let's wrap it up a little bit. We've been going for about 15-20 minutes now. And I think, and any last words and we can leave everyone with?
Just at the moment, other than we really support the vision. We really like, the minute I started telling people about this, I appreciate all the support I got. Like, people just jumped on it and I absolutely love it. And people like see where we're going with this, and they see the vision, they see what we want to do. And we're getting the donations and the fundraisers, and everybody's just, I appreciate everybody being involved in this. And it's blowing my mind, the support we've got and the connections we've got, and I love it so much. So keep at it and keep rocking with it. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. I'm usually yelling about this online somewhere.
Absolutely. And like you said, same thing. And if you're one of those people that really cares about what you leave for your children or your grandchildren, drop $1, drop $10, help support Project 3D so we can move forward and do those things, clean up the environment, and again, leave a better world for your kids and grandchildren.
Absolutely. Yep. It's coming. Tomorrow is coming, whether you like it or not. So it just matters what we do today.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you all, and we'll talk to you more and more as we get further down the rabbit hole of our fundraiser, and in the future as we do bigger and greater things with Project 3D.
All right. See you guys. Bye.